When I speak of the undoing, I mean the classic wish. Why can't things be different from the way they are? Why were the old days better than nowadays? I wish I could go back and change this or that. I happen to have such thoughts on the regular in my own life, so I suppose it's natural for this thread to come to mind. Also, we've got popular nowadays, we've got Isekai, that genre. We've got time travel as a power and ability. These are common in stories, especially nowadays. It's like, by definition, regrets are things which you sort of wish were not there. You wish you didn't have them. So the things that are the details of your regrets, you wish you could change them. That's natural flow of the value of those things that you don't like. So what I mean to say here is, especially with Isekai and time travel powers in mind, the thing that they are pandering to, which is, the regret of having regrets, the displeasure that we have with regrets, the wish that we could undo them, and so on, it's an utter impossibility. It's the paradox of time travel, or I would say the logical proof or disproving of time travel. I consider time travel fundamentally impossible at a conceptual level. I once told an associate of mine regarding this. When in a story, what I mean is the very power or ability of time travel is utterly impossible, even in a story, fiction, utterly impossible. What it is something else, but it is called time travel. It mimics the idea we have of what time travel should be, but actually it's not time travel. I would say it's similar to that guy from the X-Men, that guy with the eye laser powers. They say we think that he's shooting lasers out of his eyes, but apparently in the comic books they explain it. They say he's not actually shooting lasers out of his eye, but rather what he's doing is he's opening a portal to another dimension, and in that dimension there is this huge, intense concussive energy. And therefore, we see the energy beams going out, but actually it's just him opening a portal to another dimension. It's not him shooting the energy beams out of his eyes. Time travel is a bit like that. We think it's one thing, it looks like one thing, its practical effect looks like that one thing, but it's actually something else altogether. And with that in mind, I would even say even the effects are actually outright impossible. The idea of time travel, you go back in time, you make different decisions. Here's the problem. And actually they addressed this in The Flash, a TV series, Arrowverse, when they said that reality is split into multi-universes. In one universe you make a decision, in another universe you make a different decision. Whenever you make a different decision, a new universe is born, one that flows along with that different decision. Even that attempted explanation is not enough, because you don't just make conscious decisions. Every single second, millisecond, the smallest second, time unit, something different comes out of you because at levels you cannot see. For example, you wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, wherever you are at. What influences decisions? It's your feelings, your thoughts, your influences, all of those. In order for you to make a different decision in each universe, one of those has to be different from each other. And that in itself is a question, why would it be different? Which makes the multiverse theory a conceptual impossibility as well. Or no, it's not impossible, but rather it's unscientific. It cannot be explained. It's like you can come up with an explanation for why some people like sweets and why other people like ice cream. And no, not an explanation for why, but rather the results of some people liking sweets and other people liking ice cream, and the differences it makes to their lives, all of that. You can come up with explanations going forward, but you can never come up with an explanation for why they are different in the first place. That's the business with the multiverse theory. You can say this person in this universe, universe 1, the Flash decided to go east. In universe 2, he decided to go west. You cannot explain why he made that different decision. It's scientifically impossible to explain why. At least within the person of the Flash. The best you could do is to say there are entities which can travel between universes and they choose to go and influence the Flash in this universe differently and the Flash in that universe differently. You have to go outside of the character of the Flash, of the person, in order to explain why he made a different decision. You cannot within himself find an explanation for the why. But the problem with that is that you're simply pushing the problem slightly backwards. You're not dealing with it fundamentally, which is to say, okay, you've explained what caused the Flash to go east in this universe and to go west in that universe. You still haven't explained the proper origin. Why did the entity itself choose to influence him differently? The proper origin point here is the influence of decisions. At first, this problem was being addressed from the perspective of the decisions made by the Flash. Once you found an explanation that says fundamentally it wasn't a decision made by the Flash but by another entity, still a decision was made. Why was it made differently here? Why was it made differently there? That problem still exists. And you cannot secularly, materially find an answer to why was there a difference anyway in the first place. The true core of the question cannot be answered with secular materialistic thinking, or what is commonly called science. Logic cannot be answered. You can explain what happens after the difference takes place, the influences it will have in this universe and that universe, and you can write 10,000 books of explanations, entertain children for days, make them forget about the original question, but you cannot properly answer the original question, and that creates a logical gap within the story that we are given. Therefore, it's not complete, it's not proper. It's just a what-if idea. That's all it is. It's not a complete canon as it should be in any complete world, story, any of the sort. Obviously, this applies to other things as well. So multiverse theory, if it could work, the reasons why it can work are unknown to materialistic logic, inaccessible to it, to us at the level that we operate, even in stories of fiction. Because it's similar to that thing of changing the core difference from being in the character of the flesh. In universe 1 he goes east, in universe 2 he goes west, to now making it actually the difference came from this multiversal entity. You're not dealing with the core of why is there a difference. You're simply pushing it back. It's not a difference in the Flash, it's a difference in another entity who then influenced the Flash according to the difference that they already had. Why did they have the difference? You're not really answering the question, so it's not complete, it's not proper. It's therefore illogical. Still, you can make a story, but the value of that story is the natural interest in progression of events. It's not in how complete its canon is. It's really no different from making a story in which pigs are flying around and that's it. Okay, nice picture, pigs are flying around, roses are singing and dancing, everything's nice and lovely. Nice picture. But in terms of logical value, a complete canon, a case study, there's almost none. So when it comes to the concept of time travel, it's impossible because it returns unto itself. Before a person can travel in time, they must already have experienced things in a certain way. This is why Arrowverse went with multiverse. Because multiverse, at least from the point of the difference onwards, allows you to have the person who already lived a certain life go back and change the decisions they made without undoing the fact that they already made those decisions. You simply say those decisions are in another universe. You simply push it back. You don't, well, in this case, you push it aside. You don't answer that core question. So since the idea we are working with and the sentiment that we are pandering to with Isekai and time travel powers, it's to undo the regret. It's to remove the regrets. That's what it's appealing to. It's therefore impossible. Because in any story, the character has, but we've already concluded that multiverse theory is illogical. It's incomplete. It's logically incomplete. and therefore cannot stand. Something cannot stand by the rules of logic for at least two reasons. One, contradictions within itself. Two, it's incomplete. It's like a house without a foundation. Cannot stand. Material physics say the cement, bricks, and so on, their weight is greater than the weight pound per square inch of classic earth, therefore the house will sink. Without a foundation, cannot stand. It'll sink. Conventional house, obviously. It's that sort of thing. Conceptually, what is being presented must be able to stand fully. Like a house. A house needs a foundation, it needs material, it needs construction, architecture, design, and of course, finally, it needs an effect. It mustn't simply be there visually, it must have an impact. For example, when you've got a house, you've got a place to stay warm in winter, you've got a place to dodge the sun in summer, and so on. There's a practical value to it. Even if the value is emotional, that's a value. There is such a thing as emotions. There must be a value to it. So these different parts, these different requirements for something standing, existing, multiverse theory is lacking the part of being complete. Definitely has a value to try and explain time travel and so on. Has a purpose, which is to pander to the emotion, that feeling of wanting to remove regrets. But it doesn't have the full structure that would allow it to serve the purpose. And the part of the structure that is lacking, it happens to be the foundation, the part that is right at the start of it. Well, you could say that foundation, I would say it's even further back than the foundation. It's the material in the first place that you would use to construct the foundation. The logical material is not there. It cannot be reached through the tools of logic, which are the tools that we have to work with when presenting any idea. Similar to how a construction worker has his muscle and his tools to work with when building a house, and the materials, the rock and whatever he uses to build the house. So the first problem is the contradiction of how do you go back and undo what is part of what makes you who you are in the first place without undoing yourself in the process. Multiverse theory tries to answer this question, and if you simply accept that, okay, there's multiverse and that's how it is, then yeah, it does answer it. Problem is, the multiverse theory itself lacks foundation. It lacks material to construct the foundation in the first place. I had told myself I would not go on for days and days when making these posts. Unfortunately, I've clearly failed. I apologize for that, but please allow me to go on. The second issue, besides the fact that you're undoing your very self, something which is an influence on yourself, even if you say, okay, let's just say it's multiverse or whatever. The problem is that very same, the multiverse theory used in Arrowverse, it says that you essentially do a fission clone of yourself, of the universe you are in, with every slight difference. Oh yes, I must go back to that slight difference thing. Because when you make a different decision, universe 2 is created, whereas the one who made the original decision continues universe 1. Um, the thing is, before that different decision was made, both versions of you remember what came before. And in the case of time travel, it's what caused you to choose to travel in time, which, according to the feeling that we are pandering to with this entire genre of Isekai and time travel, wanting to erase regrets. In this case, the regret I'm addressing is something that has happened, especially if it's something that you have done and that impacted you, that shaped you, which it has to have, even if the impact was small. You cannot undo that impact that exists within you. In fact, because of the level of our brains that we function at, it is very low. You cannot even do the impact that is on the outside. You can go to that thread about what is at the core value of people, where I talk about you can never ever replace a person because of their uniqueness and all the reasons why, the things that make them unique. It's simply far beyond our power to ever be able to fully replace a person. Ever. Absolutely cannot. You can replace some of the value they would have brought. For example, let's say you're running a company, one of your construction workers has to take leave or whatever, you hire another worker, trained from the same school and whatever, to do his job because he did his job well. Still, in their hearts, in their minds, in their tendencies, the things that make them who they are as individuals, there will be a difference, and that difference will express itself at some point when the guy is doing his work. And even if it's a small difference, there will be a difference compared to if the original guy was there. And of course, the philosophical value of these conversations, over time, the impact of that difference becomes greater and greater. A butterfly effect. So by the same value, thinking, when something has already been done, you can go back. Let's say, for example, especially talking about bad things. Let's say you are drunk one day and you got in a fight with someone. That person sees you're drunk, lets it go, forgives you, even takes you home, and then they go back home. Whatever punch you landed on them, that little black eye you gave them, has an impact that deteriorates their action ability. It could be reacting to a falling object. It will at some point have an impact. And even if that impact is small at first, over time, the impact will have an impact, and the impact of the impact will have an impact, and butterfly effect, it will grow. Once it is there, the first part of it, which is to say when you throw the punch, once that has happened, the impact will be there. Say now, you go back, you pay the medical expenses for getting the person pain tablets for their black eye. You've removed the pain. That's still after the effect. In order for them to go and get the pain tablets or whatever, you have to take time out of your day, they have to take time out of their day. those are all impacts that would not have been there if you had not thrown the punch in the first place. Once something has happened, firstly, in terms of our material capabilities, we cannot undo or make up for all the full impact that it has, purely on its quantitative impact side. Quantitative. The number of differences it makes. We cannot cover all of them. But even if we operated at a level where we could cover all of them, the impact that it has on the inside of you as a person, once you've thrown that black punch to your neighbor and so on, you now wake up the next morning and you are like, oh snap, I must be careful with alcohol. It changes you. That change cannot be undone. As soon as it is undone, it would require even the memory of it to be removed in order for it to be undone. Never mind the process of the memory being removed, then you yourself will go on to make the same mistake again. Once something has occurred, one could argue then there's an inevitability here. But definitely, once something has occurred, it cannot be undone. That's what I mean when I say the undoing cannot be. The undoing of things, the undoing of the impact of things cannot be. You can try to do something else to counterbalance the impact. But that impact is set in place, set in stone, it is definitely there. So for example, with time travel, well, firstly let me answer that part of the little impacts. Another problem with multiverse theory is that when it says with each different decision you make, you create a split universe, second copy. What it says conceptually is that every difference makes a difference, creates a different universe. And the sheer quantitative number of differences that occur in every split second is so immense that to say you've got infinite universes is an understatement, impossible as that may be. Because again, what causes a different decision? If the difference is within the person, let's say like in my example, the Flash, one day he feels like going east, the other day he feels like going west. If the difference is within him, behind each decision are feelings, ideas, preferences, all sorts of things which are of quite a large number. One of them has to be the different thing. If it is already different within him, then it will cause, at first, minor differences, assuming it is born small in the first place. At first, it will cause minor differences. In one universe, he gets up to go and cook. He may think about precisely whether he should cook macaroni and cheese or spaghetti and sauce. He may spend half a second more thinking about it than he would in another universe. That's a difference, that's a split universe. And then after thinking about it and making the decision, in carrying out the task, that slight difference within him, let's say it's a feeling, it may cause him, let's say the feeling is a desire. In one universe, the desire which is there will cause him to think about it for half a second. In another universe, that desire is not there. He won't think about it. There will be half a second difference in how long he takes to cook the same macaroni because he spent half a second in the other universe sighing about whatever it was that he desired. So there are so many differences at just the minute level, the small level, that in almost every second, infinite universes are created. Then you get to the conscious decisions a person makes. And even then, there's the decision, then there's the process of carrying out that decision, then there's the impact of that decision. Everything that is different within the person will cause a slight difference in execution of the task every single split second, creating infinite universes. So a true multiverse world, or a true presentation of the idea, would have to present infinite universes. It's really not a multiverse theory. It's an infinite universes theory, at least at a practical level. Because really, there's the decision, there's the reason behind the decision, and the impact that that reason would have had before. The impact that reason has at every split second on your character, on whether you get up half a second later, earlier, and so on and so on. The truest multiverse presentation we can get has to be a practically infinite universes explanation, which requires a lot of energy. A thing cannot happen without energy to power it. Whatever energy there is to create literally new universes has to be immense, at least compared to the level we operate at, has to be immense to the point where you can say it's got infinite energy. But it can't truly be infinite, because if it was truly infinite, then the energy would overload and cover everything, and everything would be destroyed in a split second. See, these ideas end up destroying themselves. They cannot work. Maybe this is why it's even in religion. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? Because it is foolish to say such things. Honestly, I've read that line for a long time, and I've wondered about it. Because in my opinion, it was simply a matter of fact. Either the old days were better for a specific objectively identifiable reason, or they were not better. So why is it foolish? It should be simply an investigation. An investigation, part of a process of trying to make things better. Why is it foolish? Well, this is honestly the first time I think I've found an answer that explains why it's foolish. Because these ideas, they collapse upon themselves. That's the conclusion I'm reaching right now as I'm telling you. I'm thinking out loud right now, honestly. So, multiverse theory has to be infinite universes theory, which requires some source of infinite energy, which in turn, if it's truly infinite, necessitates that it would invade everything, destroy everything in a giant explosion. It then becomes a no-universe theory. Collapses in on itself within a split second, because at its foundation, it needs a source of infinite energy. The sheer amount of universes it creates. you could say, as I've already noted, it's not truly infinite energy because it's not truly infinite universes. Problem is, even if you say each universe is like a single grain of sand, I like that idea, by the way. I don't think it's true, but I do like it. Exploration of ideas and all of that. The problem is we can almost count the grains of sand. We can scale the amount of grains of sand. We know there's enough to make up the earth, but not more, because then the earth would be bigger. We've scaled the size of the earth. Even if it's not always presented accurately, we've practically scaled the size of the earth. So there's an amount of grains of sand which is definitely finite at the level of intellectual understanding that we operate at. Even if you say each universe is like a grain of sand, we can quantify that. Whatever source of energy is powering it, it has to be at a level that's practically infinite. And practically infinite means the practical effect of it is the same as if it were infinite. That means the energy spreads everywhere. The energy is so great that it's like consider the idea of a nuke. What's a grain of sand to a nuke? It should just work with the idea. I understand that technically what I'm saying might not be true, but the basic idea, that's what I'm working with here. A nuke should obliterate a grain of sand, right? I'm pretty sure it actually doesn't, but it's like the idea of this huge ball of energy compared to a little grain of sand. I'm talking about the idea, not the actual thing. So if there's the source of energy, which has to have a limit, because remember, our lives are not perfect. If there was such a source of energy, our lives would be sprinkly perfect, so perfect. The workings of it ultimately don't work. I say this as a religious person. Understanding the implications of what I'm saying in other conversations. The workings don't work. The level that a grain of sand is at compared to such a source of energy that can create practically infinite universes in a split second, every single split second, for thousands, millions, billions of years. Every single difference creating a new universe. The source of energy you require by itself cannot at the same time begin to care about every little difference enough to note them. It logically contradicts its own existence. Where would such a source of energy come from? If it comes from a conscious entity or race of entities or whatever, the level that the source of energy is at, the engine, let's call it, so huge. They cannot care about grains of sand when they've got an engine so powerful it creates infinite universes every split second. So it can't be an engine created by a conscious entity. So then the engine then has a logical gap in its existence. Where does it come from? And in fact, never mind the logical gap. If there's no conscious entity controlling the engine that powers this creation of universes, then there's nothing restricting the energy that is being blasted out, which in turn means it invades everything. Boom. It's a no-universe theory. So you absolutely need a conscious entity to control this energy that this engine puts out. I won't say what I want to say, but you get to a level where we simply cannot consider what might be happening here. We should just shut our minds off of that line of thinking and continue on our way. The powers at play in such a scenario are so crazy beyond the beyond. In terms of their scale, their level. But at the same time, how are we able to consider it if it's simply irrelevant for us to consider it? That's a logical contradiction. Many problems with this multiverse theory. This one, starting from that point of there are differences that happen at every split second. So then to get to what is time travel then? If you're not using multiverse theory, because it has so many problems, each of which undoes the theory, ironically. If you're working with multiverse theory, if you're not working with it, here's what time becomes by necessity. It becomes a stream, like a river. You do things is you traveling down this river. You hit some rocks along the way, your boat gets damaged, you regret this, you want to undo the damage, so you go back up the river. Problem with going back up the river is that it doesn't undo the damage to the boat that you are traveling with. That boat is your consciousness. It's your life story. It's a conceptual boat, you see. Once the damage has been done, going up the river doesn't fix the boat that you've gotten off of down the river. It's not like there are infinite boats that just waiting for you to get on them if you ever need them. You get to that concept of infinity one way or the other. And once you've gotten there, problems abound. So you get off the boat that you are currently on because it's damaged. Go upstream, but where are you going to get a new boat? So the damage that has been done, you going back upstream to travel down the river again. First of all, the very particles of water that you are now on top of are different from the ones you were on top of before. So you haven't truly gone back up the river. You've gone to what is fundamentally a different river from the one you were on before. Even within this example, explanation, this allegory of what time travel would be. Even within the allegory, The river that you are on, once you've gone back up, because it's made up of different particles of water, the same type, but still different, it's not the same river anymore. So that's what time travel by necessity has to be. It has to be a river, and you are simply choosing to go back up the river because of some regret of what happened the last time you were going down the river. Trying to re-experience that, but at a foundational level, the microscopic level, it's a fundamentally different river. It can present different problems. Even if the overwhelming forces that influence the tides of the river and the water flow, the intensity, speed, and all of that are so big that different particles of water still do the exact same jumping up and down the water. Okay. And the problem is, there is a difference that occurs inside of you which cannot be undone. Let's say there was infinite boats just waiting for you to call them up whenever you need a new boat. Let's say there was. The problem is the you who is getting on the new boat is the you who has already experienced the damage done to the old boat, is a fundamentally different person. So what happened? The damage to your boat that happened before, your boat being your life story, that cannot be undone. The impact it has, you can get a new boat, but the impact is still there in you, within you as a person. And especially if when the boat took some damage, let's say from a rock, a splinter went and lodged in your arm, now you've got blood damage to your flesh. Cannot be undone. Once something has occurred, once something has been done, fundamentally cannot be undone. You can try to make up for it. And certainly you could do that in terms of mathematics. The mathematics of positive constructive value versus negative destructive value. On that side you could. Let's say you eat someone's lunch, they go hungry for the day, you regret this, you decide to work super hard, start a company, become a millionaire, and then you pay this person $1 million as an apology for one day eating their lunch. You haven't undone the pain they felt when they were hungry. Make it worse if they've got a disease which needs them to eat regularly. But most would conclude a single box of lunch, $1 million easily makes up for it. In fact, you would give up your lunch for 10 days straight if you could get $1 million. Here's the thing though. What if, while eating that specific lunch, you would have been the one to have an idea to start a company that makes you not just a millionaire, but a billionaire? And this is part of, you cannot replace a person. So, even when you try to pay for the damage you've done for something before, settlements they do in court, there is a creative value of things which we do not know and we cannot quantify because we do not know it. Perhaps if we knew that when the person ate that lunch that day, it would have made this difference and that impact would have eventually had a certain difference in their life that takes them from being a millionaire to being a billionaire. You can quantify $1 billion. It's a lot, but you can quantify it. And therefore you can try to make up for it mathematically. Numbers. Perhaps if we knew the difference it would have made, we could at least on paper, certainly in terms of our capability, we are simply not at that level, but on paper it should be possible to make up for it. However, the very first part of this is knowing the difference it would have made. We don't know that. We practically cannot know that. I cannot even imagine how we could know that without going into the supernatural. So, even the idea of trying to make up for something using mathematics is lacking something which is a fundamental piece, knowing that difference in the first place. And even if you knew that difference, it would be immensely difficult. Because what happens if the person would have become a billionaire from the idea they would have had in that split second? Very difficult to make up for that. I mean, you could on paper, but very difficult. But here's the thing, even if you could, the fact that you don't know in the first place means can't begin. Can estimate, which I think is what they do in court settlements, but can't properly know. So even the idea of trying to make up for something is lacking a fundamental piece, a foundational piece. But then you get to trying to undo the damage you've done with any decision made, such as punching your good neighbor on the day you were drunk. A story like this actually happened, by the way. I'm aware of it. It happened in my life. Some people I know. Was an embarrassing moment when the guy who did the punching came to apologize. Embarrassing. Really a shameful moment for him. Well, anyways. You could just see it. The guy was distraught having done such a thing. Well, anyways. Even with the idea of trying to go back and undo what has happened, let's say you can, on paper, mathematically, in terms of its value, the impact it would have had on the person's life if you hadn't done the wrong thing you did, could make up for it. Give them $1 million for one day stealing their lunch. The impact it has already had on their lives and the impacts that impact will have, the butterfly effect, cannot constrain that. And even if you could somehow constrain it, cannot undo the difference it made to you as a person on the inside, which in turn means you're a different person going forward. The impact is there, cannot be undone. So that's what I mean when I say the undoing cannot be. The undoing of things, of actions, of things done, things that have already happened, cannot be. And in considering this, I'm starting to understand a bit more of my religion, actually. But anyways, that's my opinion. I think fully and properly, nothing can be properly undone. Especially on the bad side. Even on the good side as well, because it's the same. Same a movement starting on a morally neutral position, moving to a morally bad position if you do something bad, moving to a morally good position if you do something good, left and right, that sort of thing. It's the same process that happens, but simply in different directions. Once something has occurred, once something has come into existence, that cannot be erased, cannot be negated. Can try to make up for it, but even if you could make up for it or do something of value that matches the counter value of the original thing, that original thing still has an existential effect that is written into existence, cannot be erased. Therefore, the very thing that in the stories, powers like time travel or Isekai, being reborn into another world, where you can essentially relive life, have a satisfactory life this time around, cannot be. Because that dissatisfaction, it writes itself deep into you. Cannot be erased. Can try to make up for it, can try to be a better person, but that impact is already there. Even if you do genuinely become a better person, make up for it even more than its value, and so on, and therefore someone could say, overall, because that bad thing occurred on that day, at the end, the world became a better place because you became a better person and you gave back more than what you initially took, and so on. Fact is, that's still part of the impact. That thing occurred, it is set in place, the fact that it occurred. This is talking purely about the fact and the practical impact of the fact. It has its impact, it exists now. It cannot be made to unexist, as far as I can think. So, the undoing of things, which is what genres like Isekai, like time travel stories and so on, those tropes, what they pander to, what they appeal to, it's a fundamentally impossible thing. And this is closely connected to why I think true time travel is also impossible. And even at a conceptual level, it's useless on the specific part of the specific value of it would be to undo, right? Write something out of reality that has occurred. Here's the problem. First of all, because of the impact it has already had within you, it cannot be undone. You yourself become part of what records it into existence. Firstly, memory is a big thing, you see. It's actually tied to one of my long-standing core wishes for what-if scenarios. It's related to memory. Well, anyways, the other part is, if somehow, despite all the logical walls that stand in its way, somehow something could be truly undone, removed from existence, across time, space, matter, and all of that, even you as a person. Problem is, it then causes you to go back to the person you would have been if that thing had not occurred. But the person that you would have been is the person that you were, who ended up doing that thing that you did. So, if a true, whether it's through time travel, whatever it is, undoing, unwriting of something out of reality could be done, it becomes a useless thing because you become the exact same person who makes the exact same mistake. So it's either impossible or useless to undo things. Maybe that's why, at least in my religion, there is a line that says, "Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is foolish to ask such questions." Maybe, but I get a feeling I have not fully comprehended it. But this is certainly the first time I've found something that seems to be so directly answering of that line, explaining why that line is there. Honestly, first time. And it happened during this post. However, if on your side, even before you listened to this post, you think things can be conceptually undone, please present your idea, your thinking. As long as it's your genuine view, understanding, idea, whatever, I am very much interested in getting your feedback. So that's why I say the undoing cannot be, because that's my opinion, but I also put in brackets, or can it, because I also want to hear what you have to say on this. Do you disagree? Do you somewhat agree? Do you fully agree but have even more to present on the topic? Please bring it forward. I very much would like to hear. Thank you.